Picture this, a die-hard Bitcoin guy suddenly says that XRP isn't a scam. You know, wait, what did I just say? Yeah, you heard that right. And it sent me down a crypto rabbit hole that I never saw coming. Now, I was sipping on my morning coffee as I usually do when I nearly did a spit take, again, reading the tweet, right? Did Scott Melker, you know, the Wolf of All Streets himself, a big name or big time kind of Bitcoiner, just say that XRP is not a scam? I basically double checked that, so I wasn't, you know, reading some kind of fake news or fake account. A top Bitcoiner giving XRP a little, even a tiny little nod of approval kind of felt as likely as my cat learning to bark. So it's like seeing a die-hard Yankees fan suddenly cheer for the Red Sox. It's just simply unheard of. Now, to appreciate why, you know, this comment is such a bombshell, you've got to know the backstory here, right? Bitcoin and XRP communities have had a long-standing rivalry. I mean, long time, right? Bitcoin purists often kind of deride XRP as the banker's coin. It's too centralized, not a real crypto in their eyes. And on the flip side, the XRP Army, yep, that's what they call themselves, accuses Bitcoin maxis of being arrogant gatekeepers who are scared of XRP's potential. Basically, it's been like the kind of, I guess, monologues and just basically all-out war between these guys for years, right? Now, constant drama and no love lost. So these spats, they get pretty intense, right? I'm talking thousands of tweets flying backwards and forwards, right? People blocking each other over every single meme, right? Now, it's kind of basically a soap opera, day in and day out. So even a big name, even kind of slightly defending XRP is kind of a bit of a curveball. So naturally, my curiosity went into overdrive here. Was this a sign of the apocalypse, or just a huge misunderstanding blown out of proportion? Either way, I know, or at least I knew, that this was going to be one of those wild stories that I had to tell you guys. So buckle up, because I've got to share just how all of this went down. So here is the backdrop for you guys, right? The crypto market was on fire recently, right? I'm talking altcoins going bonkers like it's 2017 all over again. Ethereum popped about 9% in 24 hours. XRP, that dinosaur altcoin, if you will, jumped 10%. And over the last week, Ethereum was up 23% and XRP was up a whopping 33%. And mind you, right, XRP is an older timer in crypto, right? It was launched back in 2012. It's been through booms and busts and even a massive lawsuit with the SEC in recent years. So lately, it hadn't pumped like this in a while. So a 33% jump kind of felt like a bit of a comeback tour for a band that you hadn't had a hit maybe for years. Now, I remember checking my Kraken Pro app and, you know, seeing those numbers all in green, thinking, dang, Santa came early this year. Quick transparency though, I do have a Kraken affiliate link that is down in the description. If you use that to sign up and trade, it won't cost you anything extra, but it does help the channel out here. That is kind of my go-to exchange for tracking all these things, and if you use it, I would appreciate it, but there's no pressure. You've got to use the exchange that is right for you. Anyway, it's not too bad or not too shabby of a performance in the last week for something that is a scam, right? Well, naturally, everyone was trying to figure out why these old school coins were suddenly the life of the party. And to tell you what, it turns out that it wasn't magic unicorn dust after all. It was politics. A new law with the cheeky name, the Genius Act, that had just passed. Basically, Congress finally did something and gave the thumbs up to crypto, especially stablecoins. Now that lit a fire under the whole altcoin market. Now in crypto speak, some were even kind of whispering that an altcoin season was upon us. That's kind of when all of these smaller coins start skyrocketing after Bitcoin has had its run. And those alt seasons are when these kind of tribal rivalries really flare on up. So the underdog coins suddenly take the spotlight, and the top dog Bitcoin takes a little bit of a back seat for a bit of a change. It's exciting for some, ego-bruising for others, so tensions were, already kind of up in the air, shall we say. And of course, whenever prices pump, you kind of get, at least a lot of the hot takes, right? You can enter Mark Yusko, a heavyweight in the investment world, CEO of Morgan Creek Capital, and a kind of Bitcoin true believer, if you will. He jumps on, at least on the kind of Scott's podcast, to kind of chat about the rally. Now, Yusko wasn't, exactly singing XRP's praises. In fact, he basically said, yeah, XRP is up, but so what? Now, he reminded everyone that he's called XRP a scam before, and guess what? He pretty much doubled down on it. Now, he even joked on the show that you got me in trouble with the XRP Army, but made it clear that he wasn't sorry. He effectively said, I might have called it a scam, and I still kind of stand by that. According to Yusko, just because XRP's price mooned doesn't mean that it magically got more useful overnight. And you know what? The man kind of has a point, right? He literally just said, the fact that an asset increases in price doesn't mean that the functionality got any better. It just means that there's more buyers and then there are sellers, right? It's hard to argue with the logic, right? And asset pumping usually does mean that there are more buyers than sellers. Congratulations, that's how it works. Not that the tech, sprouted new wings and all of that. I mean, when did Bitcoin last sprout some wings? Anyway, Beanie Babies, they shot up in value once too, right? But that didn't turn them into revolutionary plush toy technology either. I guess you gotta know what you're buying. Anyway, Yusko also threw some cold water on one theory swirling around, that some XRP hopefuls think that the government might secretly be gearing up to use XRP for something big. Now, this speculation went into overdrive after Ripple's CEO, Brad Garlinghouse, was seen in a photo at a kind of Mar-a-Lago with a certain president. Now, the XRP side took that as a sign of, oh man, they're going to make XRP part of the US financial system. Yusko, of course, basically laughed it off, but, here's the thing. Speculation alone can drive prices like crazy. Now, in crypto, there's a saying, buy the rumor and sell the news. Even a totally unproven idea, like the governments, might be using XRP, can ignite a buying frenzy if enough people believe it or want to believe it. It's kind of both fascinating and a little bit scary, because the hype can outrun the reality by a country mile. I mean, he also said that there's zero evidence that the government is planning to king make XRP or stash it in Fort Knox or whatever. In his eyes, the rumor mill was in overdrive with nothing real to back it up. Hard to disagree there, sometimes a photo is just a photo. Now, let's move on and imagine the reaction in the XRP camp here, right? They were livid with all of this, right? They don't call it an army for nothing, right? Now, the XRP faithful rallied together quickly whenever they sense someone attacking their beloved coin. And here's this Bitcoin guy, that I haven't really heard of, basically calling their baby a scam once again, dismissing the price surge as hype, and even calling, a bit of a dinosaur. Same old story. Now, it was on, right? Crypto Twitter lit up like a Christmas tree, right? One XRP influencer who goes by the name of Digital Asset Investor posted the podcast clip and let it rip. He posted the podcast clip and lit the bat signal for the XRP Army, right? Replies and memes started flying in. Some cheering him on, others, mostly Bitcoiners of course, clapping back with their own takes. It was complete chaos. Now, according to him, guys like Yusko are just scared. They're scared that someday XRP could dethrone Bitcoin, or at least steal a lot of its funder. I mean, I can see why. Bitcoin doesn't really do anything anymore, right? It kind of failed. I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's a failure. But anyway, these guys, they pointed out that the fear of XRP one day surpassing Bitcoin might be what's driving all of this XRP bashing anyway, right? He even explicitly wrote that Bitcoin maxis fear the flippening, right? Meaning that one day XRP could potentially overtake Bitcoin. And in crypto lingo, a flippening is kind of like the ultimate power move. One coin dethroning another. Now for Bitcoin, I guess advocates, the fault of XRP becoming #1 is just downright, hearsay. Like if you're afraid of XRP possibly becoming king of the hill, you're going to try to knock it down, right? And for those XRP faithful people, this kind of felt just like confirmation of a long-held suspicion. They've believed for years that certain Bitcoin maximalists spread FUD about XRP just to try to keep its price down. And Yusko calling it a scam, even after a big win with the SEC, it kind of just poured gasoline on that fire. And you can see why the XRP Army have a bit of a point. Now, in moments like this, I kind of appreciate having a little oasis away from all of the flame wars. So here is a shameless plug alert. Our free educational Discord server, seriously, right? While Twitter was blowing up, people in our Discord were actually having civil discussions about this whole XRP versus Bitcoin drama, right? We've got people who love Bitcoin, right? People who love XRP, and guess what? They haven't killed each other, right? It's actually possible to disagree without having pitchforks at each other's necks, right? So yeah, if you ever want to escape the chaos and the absolute bullshit of X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it, then jump into a friendly community, then check out the Discord. All right, so that's the plug over with. Let's get back to the nonsense. So anyway, the Twitter storm kept on escalating, right? That is when, Brad, Kim's, the guy who, behind, digital kind of perspectives, chimed in with the Vegas story, and this one blew my mind, right? Kim's basically said that the Bitcoin crowd was so determined to keep XRP in the shadows that they allegedly intervented, I should say, to stop XRP's conference from booking a venue in Las Vegas. Like, really? Right? Apparently, there's a Bitcoin Vegas event and an XRP Vegas event, both slated for 2026. Yeah, and XRP has its own Vegas event. Crypto fandom is real, right? Anyway, different dates, no overlap, no direct competition. But according to Kim's, the XRP event organizers couldn't book the same venue because someone on the Bitcoin side said, nope, not on our turf. And if that is true, that is some next level pettiness, right? Honestly, I couldn't help but imagine some kind of smoky backroom deal going down like a bunch of corporates, right? A bunch of Bitcoin bros, centralizing their thoughts on the market. Sunglasses telling the casino. Now, if you let those XRP guys in, well, our event's walking. Totally ridiculous. So if it is true, they have basically just become centralized maxis for the Bitcoin argument. Now, I know, right? But that is the picture that Kim's painting, right? And I mean, crypto's a $1 trillion industry, and we're squabbling over convention centers space in Las Vegas. I mean, I've been there. I really wouldn't squabble over it. Now, there goes my glasses. You really can't make this stuff up. Anyway, Kim's took that as a clear sign. Some Bitcoin people will do absolutely anything to snub XRP, right? He seemed, genuinely frustrated by it, right? This guy is trying to build bridges, right? And he even invited big name Bitcoiners like Mark Yusko, yep, the very same Yusko, and Caitlin Long to speak at the XRP event, trying to say, hey, let's all get along. And how was that gesture rewarded? With Yusko and others throwing shade at Ripple, the company behind XRP, and all about their kind of bank charter plans, and just generally keeping rivalry alive. Talk about absolute nonsense, right? Talk about extending a hand and getting a slap in return. It's like he extended a hand in friendship and got a pie thrown in his face. Now, this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses. And this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, so with the XRP community in kind of beast mode then, and Bitcoiners digging on in, Scott's in a unique position. And here's the thing about Scott. He's called the Wolf of all streets, right? And he's called that for a reason. He talks to people across the crypto spectrum, and all on his podcast, from Bitcoin die-hard maximalists to altcoin developers. Now, he's not the type to blindly hate any particular coin. If anything, he's usually the kind of mediator in these debates. Now, things were getting downright intense. It's like two proud sports teams trash-talking each other before a championship game. And then, out of nowhere, Scott, our wolf of all streets, basically steps in and goes, chill out, y'all, right? And he took to social media to clarify a few things. And here is the plot twist. He straight up said, I don't think XRP is a scam. And, everyone was like, wait, what did you just say? After all of this chaos, the Bitcoiner himself is saying XRP is not a scam. Yep, right? He even added that he doesn't spend much time thinking about XRP, which is almost more of a diss if you think about it. Like, I don't hate it, I just don't care about it, guys. And when he basically implied that if Bitcoin are, over at least, and then he basically implied that if people are getting that bent out of shape over his lack of enthusiasm for XRP, well, that's kind of their problem, not his. That's, in his own words, many people, or at least many who think about XRP are deeply troubled when they think that someone else might think something bad about XRP. Seems like their problem, not mine. Now that's literally what he tweeted, right? Pretty bold, right? Now, in other words, the XRP diehards might be, taking things a little bit too personally. Now, I had to laugh at that because it was equal parts true and a bit brutal. And you know what? That little kind of classification did kind of calm things down just a little bit. I saw some XRP people on X actually go, okay, cool, yeah, whatever. And a few others even thanked him for saying it outright. Now, of course, still some muttered that he was just covering himself, but the tone did shift, right? It kind of went, from outright fury to a more of a kind of, I guess, begrudging kind of acceptance of it. Anyway, curious, I kept on scrolling through the replies under Scott's XRP is not a scam post, and it was mixed bag. Some users, probably XRP holders, thanked him for saying it, and a few Bitcoin diehards sarcastically welcomed him to the dark side. And others kept arguing just, for the sake of arguing. People, right? They can be absolute dicks. Now this is the internet after all, right? Everyone's a keyboard warrior in their mother's basement. Anyway, can't have 100% harmony ever, can we, right? As if that wasn't surprising enough, Scott then went on, well, at least one step further, I should say. He extended an actual olive branch here. Remember that XRP Las Vegas conference that Kim's was talking about? Well, Scott said he'd actually be willing to participate in it. He's basically like, sure, I'll come to your XRP event. Why not? I did not see, that really coming. I mean, I half wondered if he'd need a security detail there, of course, given all of this drama. But honestly, the XRP people would probably just be thrilled if he showed up at all. Now, the Wolf of Wall Street is open to walking into an XRP's, or at least onto XRP Street, so to speak. Either way, that moment will be one of the at least for the crypto history books, if it ever happens. Now, that gave me this kind of goofy mental image of a high school movie kind of ending then, right? Rivals finally shaking hands at graduation or something. Kind of wholesome, not gonna lie. And on top of it all, right, Scott teased an upcoming interview with the CEO of Flare. That might, at least the fact that, Scott is actually talking to Flare's CEO means that he's genuinely curious about what is happening in XRP's orbit. So that's a pretty big deal as well. It kind of shows that he's not just talk then, right? He's actually interested in dialogue with the XRP ecosystem. Watching all of this unfold, it kind of felt like witnessing a plot twist in a TV drama. One moment it's all conflict and name calling, and then the next there's a hint of reconciliation. And it kind of also highlights how a snippet of conversation can blow up when taken out of context. In that podcast, this was a small segment, but once it kind of hit social media, it was like an explosion. Nuance often gets lost in those 30-second clips, right? And people will fill in the blanks with whatever their own biases is. Now, it got me thinking, maybe this space is maturing. I doubt that by everything I see, but it might maybe just a little bit maturing. I mean, any kind of given day, crypto Twitter can feel like a bit of a battlefield. Bitcoin maxis versus XRP Army, Ethereum versus Cardano, right? Cats versus dogs, you name it, right? If you kind of zoom out, you kind of realize that we're all part of the same revolution, right? Trying to change how money works and how value, moves around the world. Sometimes it's easy to forget, that when you're busy kind of just picking sides. Now, I'm not going to be saying that the crypto community is going to hold hands and sing, into tomorrow. But there are going to still be these hated debates. And hey, even a little rivalry can be fun and motivating at times. But seeing someone like Scott say XRP is cool with me, let's talk, was a bit of breath of fresh air. It's a reminder that disagreements don't have to make us enemies. You can prefer Bitcoin and still not hate XRP or vice versa. Crazy concept, I know. Here's a true story though, right? I once watched a live debate at a crypto conference between a diehard Bitcoin maxi and an XRP advocate. They started off, practically yelling at each other's over decentralization and banking and all of that kind of jazz. It was just tense. But by the end of the session, they were actually found common ground, at least in their passion for crypto's future. They even shook hands on stage, to everyone else's surprise. Now that kind of moment is rare but golden, and this episode with Scott gave me a little bit of that vibe, even if it was just online. Maybe as crypto continues to go mainstream, especially now that Washington is paying attention to things like the Genius Act, we'll actually see more of this kind of solidarity, right? Because like it or not, when regulators and traditional finance bigwigs look at the crypto market, they often lump us all together. Heck, maybe they'll even see other crossovers like Ethereum's Vitalik Buterin, showing up at a Cardano meetup, or Dogecoin and Shiba Inu fans doing joint charity events, right? Okay, maybe I am just dreaming at this point, but this world, is pretty crazy, and the whole thing just makes crazier dreams and ideas seem like they are just a tad more possible. Anyway, if you've kind of been busy fighting with each other, we might actually miss the bigger picture. In the end, this whole saga gave me hope and a good laugh at the same time. We've got maximalists acting like schoolyard rivals, and when they have their moment of kind of hug it out bro energy in the middle of it, it's kind of a story that makes crypto so damn fascinating and unpredictable. I even called up a buddy of mine after seeing Scott's tweet like, dude, are pigs flying? Bitcoiners and XRP people are making nice, right? We had a good old laugh about it, but also acknowledged that it felt a tiny bit of crypto history in the making. Now, I live for all these kind of things, right? A little bit of crypto history, I guess, but, who knows? Maybe this is the start of more rival fractions, finding common ground. And if it is, and if it can happen, for Bitcoin and XRP, hey, anything can happen in crypto, right? So yeah, keep the popcorn ready, because this kind of crypto saga is far from over. And you bet that I'm going to be here for every crazy twist. So if you've enjoyed coming down this rather odd rabbit hole with me, then you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and join me on the next adventure.